It is quite rare in the US that a major theme park is built from the ground up outside of Universal and Disney, and this is the story of one that operated for only 2 years before being abandoned. Welcome back to Expedition Extinct and the story of the world's first rock and roll theme park, the Hard Rock Park.
Rock and roll!
Must have been to Hard Rock Park. Thrilling rides, killer shows, fans of all ages rock at Hard Rock Park, where rock comes to play.
Hard Rock theme park, kind of different than any other park or attraction. It's got to be the rock and roll, you know. Yes, okay. Disney's got rock and roller coaster in a movie park, and we've got rock and roll throughout, so we're kind of like rock and roller coaster on steroids here.
John Binkowski grew up in San Diego close by to SeaWorld. In fact, most of his family worked for the park, and he followed suit in the entertainment department, working his way up to eventually become vice president of entertainment, until 1989 when he co-founded his own company, Renaissance Entertainment.
Renaissance Entertainment. Turnkey product from concept to reality.
A boutique production company specializing in all forms of entertainment, the company has created work for Shanghai Disney, Universal Hollywood, Busch Gardens, Ghost and Legends of the Queen Mary, and much more. In 2001, he purchased a theatre in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, which was joint owned by himself and the bank, located in a failed development, Fantasy Harbor, a now relatively bare area with a small lake and a closed mall close to the medieval times dinner show. The theatre, while offering interesting and seasonal themed shows, did not make enough money. Unable to get out of the financial difficulty or sell the theatre, he came up with the idea to contact his neighbours and pulled together to create a brand new theme park. Back in 2001, Myrtle Beach had 13 million visiting tourists annually, and seemed to be the perfect location to bring that audience to a new theme park. With a wealth of experience working in the parks and now living in the Orlando area, in early 2001, John created a rough drawing to plan out how it could work centered around the small lake, incorporating John's theater. The local neighbors created a company called Fantasy Harbor Theme Park. Select Renaissance Entertainment members helped to visualize the planned park, which was still just an idea at this point. Artist Mike Conrad, creative director of Radical Concepts, came in to create the concept art for the park. Mike had been involved in many concept creations for Disney, including the Walt Disney World 25th Anniversary Castle Cake, Universal, and more. Originally called the Fantasy Harbor Theme Park, it featured no IPs within. The idea was for the park to be based around the 4 seasons. After the entry pavilion, on the right would be the Summer Bay area, which would have John's theatre within. Next would be Autumn Reef, Winter Wharf, which would feature the park's icon of a lighthouse in the centre of the lake, and the final area being Spring Shores. Plans continued to evolve and full concepts were created by Greg Dameron. To keep costs down, the characters for each area would all be in the public domain. Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, Jack Pumpkinhead, and even Uncle Sam. The ideas for the land began to grow and evolve, and the plans even included saving space near the abandoned mall for future expansion. The aim for the park was to stay below $20 million. The problem with such a cheap park though is that it wouldn't draw away those tourists from the beach just 4 miles down the road. More and more consultants began to be brought in and feasibility studies were carried out and the results were incredible. Myrtle Beach had enough visitors each year to support multiple theme parks, so if it could attract a portion of visitors to the park, it would surely be a huge success. The one thing the park needed though was finance. John met with Stephen Goodwin, who was previously involved with the financing of Universal Studios Florida and had previously been the managing director of Hard Rock Hotel and Casinos. Stephen began running the numbers on every aspect of the proposed park. Unfortunately, shortly after, the tragic events of September the 11th occurred, which hit no industry harder than the tourism industry. After 9/11, the team working on the project was cut due to lack of money, since Renaissance was not getting any work at the time, leaving only John and Stephen to work on the project. Together, they began to visit banks and try and achieve funding for the 30-acre park. Every bank rejected the proposal, and the feedback they received stated they needed a known IP attached to the project. In 2002, every single major theme park operator was contacted to try and be attached to the park, and again, every single one rejected the idea. not due to the cost, but due to the area the park was in at the tourism destination Myrtle Beach. Each different operator had some form of park not too far away, and were concerned that opening a park in the area would just take away from their other parks, cannibalizing their existing parks. After a continued search, the IP found that was interested was the MGM Group. At the time, Disney and MGM were on rocky terms and beginning to part ways, and they had experience in parks with a recently closed MGM Grand Adventures in Las Vegas. Almost immediately, the Fantasy Harbor theme park idea was dropped in favor of the MGM Studio theme park, and the scope of the project was expanded into the previously planned expansion area. The problem was that MGM didn't actually own most of the rights to its most popular productions, and the cost to negotiate with their individual right owners would have bumped the price up tremendously, and the plan of just another movie-based theme park was not that popular either. Late one night, John sent an email to Stephen Goodwin with a new idea. That idea was the Hard Rock Park. Rather luckily, Stephen Goodwin had previously worked for the company who owned Hard Rock and knew the licensing guy. And even more coincidentally, he lived next door to John Binkowski in Celebration, Florida. The idea for a Hard Rock Park seemed like the perfect fit for Myrtle Beach, an e-ticket family attraction theme park with a rock and roll attitude. The next evolution of the brand like the cafes, casinos and hotels before it. With a bottle of wine, John proposed his plan to Oliver Munday, licensing director of Hard Rock, and weeks later, still trying to work out the deal with MGM, Hard Rock wanted to see the master plan. Using tape and stickers, the earlier planned park for MGM was replaced with the Hard Rock Park. The original planned 4 areas of the park would be Classic Rock, Born in the USA, Cool Country, and Save the Planet. A Stairway to Heaven coaster and the Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour would be the flagship rides of the park, with the night ending at the Blinded by the Light Lagoon show. Hard Rock was in and wanted their licensing fee. After reaching out to multiple people with no interest, one man was intrigued. That man was George Millay, creator of SeaWorld and the now closed Wet 'n Wild in Orlando. George said no because he created his own ideas. He didn't create other people's. But George himself had pitched the idea for a Hard Rock Park to Universal, which never happened. George told John he would never get funded, but to call him if he did. Oh, and also that he couldn't have any of George's money. Eventually, 2 of those neighbours of the theatre decided to fund the $2.5 million licensing fee. The Hard Rock Park was now in full-on planning stages, with concepts being drawn up even though funding had not been secured. Felix Musenden was brought in as the Operations and Park Manager, COO, who had previously been the Chief Operating Officer and President of the Universal Orlando Resort. Stephen Goodwin would be the Finance and Executive Management, CEO, and John would be the Creative and Development, CCO. While Hard Rock provided the brand and logo, it was up to these guys to create and operate everything else. Being privately owned, they wouldn't have to answer to anyone above, except for branding restrictions, mainly on logos, and together they could create the park of their dreams, and to create that park, they could use any ride and theming companies they wished. The park was designed by Bill Cunningham, who became the Director of Creative Services.
You'd get your first reveal of the big 70-foot guitar sitting up on top of the building across the lake.
A designer who had worked on projects such as Wonderworks in Orlando, Dr. Doom's Fearful, Twister, and many other projects around the world.
Over 3,000 sheets of drawings on this job, and there's a million little pieces, and there was no way to document as quickly as we did every last little tiny detail.
Promotion for the park began before the park had even been funded. A group of investors headed by New York real estate investor Zeal Feldman eventually provided funding for the park. Zeal heard about the park from his son, who saw a book on the proposed park and thought it was a good idea. Eventually, the Hard Rock Park was funded in March 2006. Unfortunately, 1 month earlier, George Millay, creator of the water park, had passed away. That original concept for a $20 million park was changed. Funding was secured for $400 million. $225 million was used to build the park, the rest was used on loan payments. It may sound like a lot, but the original Disney's California Adventure was built for $600 million, and we all know what that opened like. But Hard Rock Park would make great use of that money.
Well, it's 1 for the money. All together, 2 for the show. Come on now. 3 to get ready! Everybody! Now go! Cat! Go!
Ground was broken on the project 2 years before opening. At IAAPA, the park announced its partnerships with multiple ride manufacturers. The park was built extremely quickly and the landscape changed drastically over just 9 months. It was completed a month ahead of schedule and under budget. The park itself was beautiful and incredibly detailed. After entering the park, you found yourself in the all-access plaza, and you can't underestimate the importance of an entry land to set the tone for a well-themed park. Like port of entry at Universal's Islands of Adventures, the entry blocked view of the park until you were far enough inside to see it sprawl out before you. On one side of the street was the large all-access merchandise store, and on the other, a coffee shop, a tried and tested layout for any entryway. Also, just like Islands of Adventure, a rock bridge welcomed you with the words, "Here we are now, entertain us." Underneath, painted, was a spoof of Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam, just the first of many unique and quirky aspects featured throughout the somewhat daring park.
This is not your traditional theme park. If you're coming for a ride park to ride all the cool rides, the biggest and the tallest and the fastest, that's not us. We are probably the coolest rides, but Hard Rock's all about the experience.
The street also featured the Whammy Bar, which each evening had rock performances on an outside patio played throughout the whole area on the entranceway speakers. And unlike most parks, the speakers in Hard Rock Park were not hidden, but proudly on full display. The park had a circular layout around the lagoon, and the first land was cool country, not just representing the music, but the lifestyle that was famous to go along with it, filled with wooden structures and rusted shacks that could be seen on many country music covers. And what was the first ride here themed as? Trucks, of course. While the original plan was a more generic amusement park, Hard Rock Park would customize nearly every aspect of the park to fit its theme. The second flat ride here was just a swing-in, and nearby was a stage for live performances during the evening. The food offerings were again to theme with Rockabilly's Barbecue and Wheelhouse Canteen Bar. The main attraction of the area, though, was Eagle's Life in the Fast Lane. While the title 1976 song wasn't really country, the theming did fit the area. A modified Vekoma mine train ending with a metallic rock and roll scarecrow shooting flames into the sky. The most striking building in the land, though, was the Ice House Theatre. That exact theatre that started the whole project in the first place, now with an award-winning ice show set to rock and roll. Born in the USA was next, with a Kids Rock State Park for the younger guests. Flying over top was Slippery When Wet, a premier ride suspended family coaster with an elevator lift and the ability to spray those below as it twisted over the state park. Not just with a state park theme though, just across the street it transitioned to an all-American boardwalk featuring the Shake, Rattle and Roller Coaster. A Vekoma Junior coaster, one of over 100 exact clones of the Barnstormer and the Flight of the Hippogriff down in Orlando. The next zone was the British Invasion, perhaps the best themed of them all, and of course I'm not biased about that. Rides inside include the London Cab Ride, all the King's Horses Carousel, and even the Magic Mushroom Garden. I told you it was slightly daring. The Phonehenge stage offered even more live performances, and the Punk Pit was a walk-through maze with inflatable slides, tunnels, climbing walls, and bounce rooms which even adults could enjoy. This area had two of the more unique rides as well. Maximum RPM, a traditional family coaster you could find in many parks but with a twist. A Ferris wheel lift. The first ever built, rotating to lift the train cars up and releasing them on the track, and it really did look impressive. The ride had huge problems though, and the opening was delayed until after the park had opened, since it essentially was the prototype. The lines for this ride could get quite long, so inside the queue line they had a karaoke where guests could come up and sing songs while they waited. Each of the roller coasters in the park had onboard audio playing rock songs timed to the ride, and this was no exception. The old abandoned mall was also reused in this area, offering the Night in White Satin, the Trip ride. Originally planned as a Beatles ride, this ride turned out to be one of the best dark rides ever created. A daring ride literally designed as if you were taking a trip, presented to the sounds of Nights in White Satin from the 1967 Moody Blues song. Inside was a mix of different effects and smells, which really was a unique experience.
Cold-hearted orb that rules the night, removes the colours from our sight. Red is grey and yellow white, but we decide which is right.
The final land, Rock and Roll Heaven, was home to Reggae River Falls, a splash playground, and Malibu Beach Party, a live lagoon dive show set to music. The centerpiece of this land, and perhaps the whole park, was Led Zeppelin the Ride. An impressive B&M coaster standing 150 feet tall with 6 inversions, featuring a full Led Zeppelin theme station before taking your ride set to Led Zeppelin songs. The 1,500-seat concert venue inside the park, built for Hard Rock Live, in its short-lived time had appearances from multiple artists. The first was Bowling for Soup, and later included performances from the Eagles and the Moody Blues themselves. The park even had 400 songs recreated to offer a seamless transition between areas, with the same song in different versions as you move from area to area. The park featured little hidden details such as a broken mirror which would have a delay on what you saw, interactive elements throughout, and much more, ending the night with a Bohemian Rhapsody firework lagoon show. Opening on April 15th, 2008, the park was truly unique and offered a fun mix of immersive rock and roll thrills and shows.
Some days I really wonder whether I'm living in a fantasy, just being a part of the opening of the world's first rock and roll theme park.
The opening reviews were great, and spending was through the roof inside the park during the opening week.
First ever rock and roll theme park is now open. Hard Rock Park is celebrating its grand opening today in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
It's the first new theme park in the U.S. in over a decade.
Hey, what up, world? It's your boy Sway. Right now I'm in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina for the unveiling of the Hard Rock Park. This is a big deal. I'm talking big music, big rides. It's rock and roll, baby.
That, though, wouldn't last. The park operated for less than 6 months. After 4 months, the park cut back the hours drastically, originally opening from 10 AM till 1 AM. The evening live performances were removed, as well as the nightly fireworks show. The ticket price was cut too, but it didn't help. 2008 was a bad time for everybody, and especially Hard Rock Park. Attendance was so low that when the park estimated 10,000 guests a day, they actually had 1,000. While guests were having a great time, it didn't help to pay the park bills and high-interest loan. A combination of the park's lack of marketing, a sudden spike in gas prices, tourists cutting back on vacation spending due to the financial collapse, and the one price for everyone admission were the biggest issues. The one price for all ticket concept was built from the idea that at the time Orlando's kid pricing was $50. Instead of doing that, Hard Rock Park would make everyone's price $50, which didn't go over well, and people did not want to pay the same price to bring their 4-year-old. Marketing-wise, not nearly enough was spent, and the park hoped that just by being in that location, they were bringing enough people from those visiting the beach. Some argued that the Hard Rock brand wasn't a good fit for a family park, while others blamed the failure on visitors to Myrtle only wanted to go to the free beaches. With a full month still planned to open, the park announced its early closure and laid off all of its employees, filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, though still announcing they would reopen in 2009. Chapter 11 has seen parks such as Six Flags enter and come out stronger, but that wasn't the case for the Hard Rock Park. The theatre that started it all had housed award-winning shows, which they actually collected those awards while the park was in bankruptcy. Despite continuing to promise it would reopen in 2009, no signs indicated it would until last minute in February another private group purchased the park for $25 million, the same price that most parks pay for one large ride. John went on to continue work at Renaissance Entertainment and still does to this day, working on projects for parks around the world.
The wrong name, a poor product that was overpriced. That's not going to work.
Richard Hare has 21 years of amusement park experience and says Myrtle Beach may have another shot at running a successful theme park only if the buyers follow the right steps.
Despite efforts to keep the Hard Rock license, it was dropped, and while keeping the music theme, a new family-friendly name was chosen, Freestyle Music Park.
I'm here with the Anderson family at the brand new Freestyle Music Park, where we're about to see if the Time Machine coaster rocks their world. Okay, we're back. Let's find out the results. Sir, are you okay? It's official, folks. This ride rocks.
Freestyle Music Park in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina is full-volume family fun.
The reopened park would reuse everything it could from the previous year, but now with a mixture of musical genres, not just rock. All reference to songs, characters, bands previously licensed were removed. Apart from a few additional children's areas and rides, everything else remained. Rock and Roll Heaven became Myrtle's Beach. Born in the USA, Kids in America. British Invasion was renamed Across the Pond, and Cool Country to Country USA. All 5 roller coasters received a new name and music. The one exception to everything being the same was Nights in White Satin The Trip, which was basically removed completely and replaced with a terrible dark ride called Monstars of Rock. The changes were not enough though, and straight away Hard Rock Park sued them for copyright infringement, claiming that visitors would be confused with its potential affiliation to the former park, essentially coasting on the works of Hard Rock. The park did reopen though in May 2009, and they were going to do things differently. Shorter hours from the start, better pricing structures for children and adults, and more marketing. When the park closed in 2009, Steve Baker, the park's now president, said overall he was happy and they were here to stay. The park never reopened again. Freestyle Music Park was being sued left, right and centre. Advertisers, ride manufacturers, creditors. Money was being requested from all angles, and the park couldn't pay it. Even BMW sued, claiming the now renamed Maximum RPM roundabout looked too much like Mini Coopers, which were not licensed. The park sat abandoned while nearly everyone involved tried to reclaim their money from the company. The owners continued to look for investors and hope for a park reopening over the years. After 5 years of standing but not operating, the park's rides were eventually auctioned off. In 2014, Medieval Times rented a portion of the land to house its horses, and a few TV shows were filmed in the park, including an episode of the TV show Revolution. In late 2014, the major attractions were shipped overseas to be rebuilt at various parks around Vietnam. Led Zeppelin the ride can still be rode today as Dragon's Run at Dragon Park in Vietnam, complete with a Led Zeppelin station. Maximum RPM with its Ferris wheel has also been running in Vietnam at Sunworld as Paradise Fall. Slippery When Wet was relocated to Sunworld also, rebuilt but never operated, and later removed. Any part of the park that wasn't sold was left, and still sits there completely abandoned, with many of the buildings being demolished, including that theatre that started it all.
The other thing is for the future, I'd like to be able to have this place grow and we have more attractions. We have Led Zeppelin the ride right now. It'd be great to have a couple of other cool attractions as we grow. But we will grow with the market. This place is an awesome community and a great place to grow up.
Hard Rock Park was a unique, truly immersive and great theme park. A major theme park even, that lasted less than 2 years. Built from scratch from the vision of one man and designed by a truly talented team of individuals, it really is one of the most tragic stories of any theme park ever created. If it had made it through those first few years, it could remain today as one of the best parks in the country. The second year of the park removed the charm and uniqueness, but not even that could save this park from being abandoned. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Expedition Extinct. Did you visit the Hard Rock Park when it was open? Let me know your experience of the park in the comments below. A special thank you to our Patreons for supporting the channel. Make sure you subscribe to join us on the expedition, and we will see you next time.